Famine in South Sudan. The UN says millions are going hungry in the world's newest country. Who is to blame for this humanitarian catastrophe? And is the world failing to help? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. South Sudan has huge areas of fertile land, but many of its people are dying from hunger. The crisis is man-made following years of civil war and a collapsing economy. Both government leaders and the United Nations have declared famine conditions in Unity State in the north, where around 100,000 people are on the verge of starvation. The UN says 5 million South Sudanese, that's around half the population, are in need of urgent help. And around 250,000 are severely malnourished. People in the northern states of South Sudan previously suffered from famine whilst fighting for independence from Sudan. Around 70,000 people died of starvation in 1998. This time, the crisis has even hit the capital, Juba. Hiba Morgan reports.
Being in South Sudan's capital was not supposed to mean going hungry. At least, that's what Susan thought, until she suffered from malnutrition during pregnancy and gave birth to an equally malnourished child.
When I gave birth to him, he weighed 3 kilos. I couldn't produce milk, so he lost weight till he was below 1 kilo. He's getting treatment, but living is hard. There is no way for me to be able to afford food, and I have another child.
After 3 years of conflict in South Sudan, thousands are displaced, and the economy has collapsed. Many families cannot afford even basic meals, leading to high rates of malnutrition. Aid organizations say that 4.9 million, that's 1 in 3 households in Africa's youngest nation, face severe food insecurity. That number is likely to rise as the country heads for lean season. More than 3,000 desperate South Sudanese are crossing into Uganda each day.
After 3 years of civil war, it's not only the capital, Juba, where malnutrition is a crisis. Some areas in the country have been hit so hard by the conflict that they're now experiencing famine.
UN agencies and South Sudan's government declared that 100,000 civilians in the northern part of the country are experiencing famine. They describe the situation as grave, and it's likely to get worse as 1 million more are on the verge of famine.
From February to July 2017, Lair and Mayendit are classified in famine, while Coach is classified as famine likely to happen. The long-term effects of the conflict, coupled with high food prices, economic crisis, low agricultural production, and depleted livelihood options, are all contributing to the deterioration of the food security situation.
Aid agencies say this famine is a man-made tragedy and that their efforts to reach those in need continue to be hindered.
The access negotiations are always dynamic. We are always negotiating access with government. I should say that on some occasions we are successful. On other occasions it becomes somewhat challenging. So it's absolutely important that humanitarians are enabled, facilitated to be able to scale up assistance.
Assistance that is a lifeline to the millions who desperately need it. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Juba.
Let's take a closer look at how South Sudan got to this point. Well, following decades of war, independence from Sudan was gained in 2011, but the relative peace was short-lived. Controversies in the oil-rich region fueled more fighting 2 years later. Tens of thousands of people have died or fled the country. The fighting side signed a peace deal in 2015 and agreed another ceasefire last July, but that peace hasn't held, and continuing conflict has led to this famine. Let's now bring in our guests to talk more about this. Joining us from Juba, Hussein Nyout, South Sudanese Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. In London, Muortat, South Sudan political commentator. And also from Juba, George Fominyen, Communications Officer for South Sudan at the UN World Food Programme. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here on Inside Story. Minister Mara, if I could start with you and ask you to describe for us the famine situation there in your country.
Thank you very much. I want to say humanitarian situation in South Sudan is appalling, is very bad. This is because of the conflict in 2013, when the crisis started here in the country. There was a war situation whereby a lot of people were displaced, both internally and externally. A lot of people left their homes. A lot of people went to refuge. A lot of people actually lost their properties because of the crisis in 2013. Again, this was coupled with some droughts in some parts in South Sudan, particularly in Bahr Ghazal, where relatively there was peace. There was also drought, and people could not actually cultivate, and they could not have enough harvest. In Equatoria, because of July last year, when again crisis started in the country, because of fear, some people also left their areas in Yei and either moved to Juba or far away to the neighboring countries like Uganda, Congo, and some people also left their homes and went far, leaving actually their farms and harvest. And this has also caused a lot of hunger in the country. So in all, I want to say humanitarian situation, our people are actually in need of humanitarian assistance. When a lot of surveys were actually conducted in South Sudan by the UN and the government of South Sudan, last week is actually the government endorsed a program which is actually a humanitarian response plan. About 5.8 million people are actually in need of humanitarian assistance, and this again. A lot of people is actually even in the capital Juba are because a lot of people got displaced from Yei and other neighboring states, and they are in Juba. Of course, they are also facing actually hunger. So I want to say the issue of famine was actually declared yesterday by the National Bureau of Statistics when they presented the IPC report. But procedurally, is actually what's supposed to happen is that the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, the Minister of Agriculture, the Bureau of Statistics, and all of us should actually brief the presidency. It was supposed the famine to be declared. Any emergency is supposed to be declared by the head of the state. It does not change the content, but this is the procedural way which is supposed to happen.
Well, let's just go to George Fominyen now to get more of an idea of what it actually means. Because, George, you cannot overstate, can we, the seriousness of the word famine. Can you tell us what it implies technically?
Technically, a famine, it means that you have people living in places where they have more or less nothing to eat. These are people who don't have any other source of livelihoods because these places, they have no money. They don't have markets where they can purchase anything that they need, and there's no trade in these areas. They are mainly in areas which are quite difficult to reach, difficult to access. The topography of this area it's a lot. There's a lot of swamps. And what some of the assessment teams which went on the ground noticed was that these people were faced with also a lot of health challenges as well, and therefore you have a combination of factors which mean that basically these people are in a very dire situation. So that's what. Together, when you imagine who is in a famine situation, it's someone who has no meal or just one meal a day. And in this case, there were people who were, according to the assessments teams, basically living on tree leaves or on water lilies and other things which they could have by if they could manage some fish.
So that, George, is what people are resorting to at the moment to try to survive in these areas?
Exactly. That's what's happening to people. A lot of them have lost their livestock, which is very important for their livelihoods. But then most of them are displaced. They have been displaced multiple times, like the Honorable Minister mentioned, because of the conflict situation which we've been living here in South Sudan since 2013.
Mawan, I want to bring you in at this point. Why do you see this happening? And as we know, South Sudan is a very fertile country, has ample fertile land. Is it purely because of the conflict that we're now seeing this situation?
Yes, South Sudan has a potential of becoming an important agricultural country. It has been for a long time. However, this has not been possible for historical reasons. South Sudan is fairly remote and also has suffered war for the last 6 years, as you mentioned earlier. Also, the opportunities for using the recent upsurge in the country's income from oil since 2005, when the war stopped. A significant amount of money has come into South Sudan. Shamefully or regretfully, a lot of that money has been plundered through corruption. The opportunities of investing into upgrading agriculture from the level of subsistence to modern farming, whereby the country could support the internal markets and hopefully also external markets, that was completely lost until this war came, which is also exhausting what is left with the money. To be also fair to the government to some extent, the economy has been affected hugely, both by the war as well as by the collapse in oil prices. So South Sudan is surviving on a fourth of what it used to have, let's say in 2010, 29, because we are only producing half of our oil and also selling it for half the price, perhaps. So a lot of different factors. But war is the reason here. South Sudan has, in recent years, has suffered 3 famines in 1988, in 1998, and now, and they are all related to war. If war is not present, food will move around and people will be able to produce enough food for themselves in the rural areas. This is largely a man-caused famine.
Mr. Ma, do you accept that this is a man-made famine, that conflict between the President Salva Kiir and the former Vice President Riek Machar has caused this situation?
Well, actually, the crisis of 2013 yes, indeed, is actually contributed to this situation in South Sudan. But again, peace agreement was signed in August 2015. With that peace agreement, the government is working hard to implement this peace agreement. And the President of the Republic also has actually declared a national dialogue so that all South Sudanese, if still they have some outstanding issues that they think have not been resolved by the agreement, still we can sit around, all of us together, so that we can reach a consensus, we can agree.
Is that really the case, though? Because many people would say that the government is making no serious attempts at all to stop the civil war, and indeed that we're still seeing fighting spreading throughout to new areas of South Sudan.
Well, actually, with peace, is not something that you achieve just one day. It is a process. A country that actually went to war, fought with armies, separate armies, a lot of militias and all this. We cannot actually have just press a button and you say the war will stop one day. But it is gradually coming together that the people are realizing now that there is relative peace in the country, but still the government is trying to reach out to those who are still holding out that we need to serve our people, serve our country by actually agreeing and discussing what are the points of differences so that actually we could address them. This situation, I believe it is a concern for everybody, whether you are in the government or you are in the opposition. If you really love this country and love the people, people will reach out for peace, because all of us are here for our people and for the country.
Mawan Muortat, if I could just bring you in at this point. I mean, just one moment, because I want to just respond to that point that you made, that you're working very hard towards the peace process. Mawan Muortat, do you believe that the peace process is working quickly enough, especially now that we have this urgency of famine?
On the one hand, we can say that war has subsided. The main war that spread out and started in 2013 we can definitely say that that war has subsided. The original areas that were affected by the war, largely Upper Nile, the war has declined there, mainly because of the agreement that was signed in 2015. Although it didn't hold in part it did not hold properly, but in general it is holding. So that is true. However, war has now spread to new areas, specifically to Equatoria. The situation is very unclear as to what is actually going on in Equatoria at the moment. We believe that the government has put this opportunity, this initiative of a national dialogue forward, as the Honourable Minister Hussein has mentioned. We are all looking forward to this commencing as soon as possible, and for all parties of South Sudan to perhaps leave their grievances aside regarding violence for the time being and give chance, negotiated peace and a peaceful resolution a chance. But I think that is, given what has been going on for the last few years, I think that's still going to take time.
George Fominyen, I mean, you've run out of time, haven't you? You've got a situation where people are already dying from a lack of food because humanitarian aid can't reach them. Access is being blocked.
What you have is a situation which comes through because of the challenges in terms of peace. You know, there are a lot of shifting alliances and people, different fight. There's lots of fighting in terms of taking up new territories, even in the places where the major fighting has subsided, and particularly in the areas of the Greater Unity or the Greater Upper Nile in general, where you have not the sort of fighting you had back in 2014, 2015, but a lot of things to do with shifting alliances, and that brings about a lot of challenges for humanitarian organizations, because it means spending enormous time trying to negotiate the access, trying to find out who is in charge of a particular area, who is in control, so you'll be able to tell them that we are coming in, we need to bring assistance to people, please ensure that this can happen, or please allow this to happen so that the people receive their assistance, so the people are safe, as well as those who are bringing assistance to them. And in this context, if you can't find that sort of situation, then you have aid or assistance which is brought in jerks. And what happens without consistent support, consistent humanitarian support, is what we are witnessing now. It's people who have been surviving on their assistance, then they don't have it, then they fall back completely to a ground zero point.
Minister Ma, we see at the end of Hiba's report there, the UN saying that sometimes negotiating this access is proving challenging in areas that the government controls. So what's your response to that?
Well, actually with us, the issue of access is the government is working together with the humanitarian partners that we are actually giving free access. And again, also, we actually work together with our security organs that to give protection to every humanitarian worker and to all their properties. And for sure, is only that sometimes some areas are very far, and South Sudan is a very vast land. There are no roads, sometimes impossible. And this becomes actually, as was said before, some people, because of fear, they move to the swamps, and sometimes very difficult for the UN agencies or the humanitarian partners to reach them. So it is not actually an issue of the government. Yes, there were some situations, but the president moved in and ordered all the security forces, the humanitarian partners, that we have to work together. He created an oversight committee, and we have actually resolved some of this, and still we are working to improve humanitarian access to reach our people. We are very determined, and the government is very serious on this.
You know, but Minister, one of the main problems that I see there in Sudan is that there are so many people displaced from their homes, they're removed from their farmland, and very many people are forced to move away from their homes because of atrocities being committed upon them by both sides. But do you accept that many of these atrocities are committed by soldiers who are loyal to the President Salva Kiir?
It's actually the president actually ordered that everybody must be evicted, those who actually move illegally to the homes of others. And the committee under the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Interior have actually removed most of the people, particularly here in Juba, and houses have vacated and given back to the owners. Now, with us, a lot of people here who are actually coming out from the UNAMIS, they have come back to their homes. And those who want to travel, we are actually working the government, and we are appealing also to our partners that we work together so that we repatriate and we resettle those who want to go to their homelands or to their estates. So this program is moving, and we appreciate the security forces that are actually evicting everybody who is actually occupying illegally homes of others. So I believe those who are also displaced to other nearby states are now starting moving back to their actually home states.
Okay,
so
Mawan, Muortat, is it safe, do you
well,
think, for people to return home, or does there still exist a culture of impunity there in South Sudan?
Yes, this goes back to the legacy of the fact that South Sudan is ruled, is governed, and is also its soldiers. They all come from the background of resistance force, the SPLA, which was the army that fought for the liberation of South Sudan for more than 22 years between 1984 and 2005. These were largely volunteers, civilians who over the years became soldiers. So there's a huge problem already, even before this war of 2013 started. There was a huge program in order to modernize and educate and make the army more professional. That has only been partially successful, hardly really achieved before the war started, and then more people started going to it. So basic atrocities and unprofessionalism is part and parcel of the history of the SPLA that the government is struggling to address, but I think is failing.
We are running out of time. We're just coming to the end of the programme. I do want to touch on the global response. George Fominyen, are you sensing an idea of global indifference to the situation there in South Sudan?
The situation in South Sudan is one that needs attention. This is the call for attention to South Sudan, because we have here hundreds of thousands of people who are at the brink of who are in a catastrophic situation for the part, and for many more who are at the brink of it. And we do understand, of course, that there are lots of other humanitarian challenges in the world, and the international community has to pay attention to these. But then it is also important that we are able to mount this colossal effort to be able to beat back this unfolding catastrophe. I think the international community has been able to support us, the humanitarians, to do this in the past 3 years. And we believe at the World Food Programme that a joint effort, especially if we can have the access which is needed, would be able to enable us beat back this catastrophe.
Minister Ma, the last word to you. How does the government plan to reverse the situation, if it's possible?
Well, with us as a government, we appeal to the international community to urgently support South Sudan so that we avert this situation. Secondly, is that the government also is made a pledge that they will contribute towards the forecast budget that actually will pay in cash or in kind, so that we also help our people from our own resources. Again, also with us as a government, we are committed that we see into it that humanitarian access is improved, and so that everybody is reached wherever they are. So we are committed as a government, and we want the international community to support the peace implementation, and particularly the national dialogue, because without peace also, even if we are putting resources, the cycle can move on again. So we want this to go together, is that peace need to be strengthened, the national dialogue need to be encouraged and given resources, while also urgently we address the issue of humanitarian in South Sudan. Together, I think we can have a way forward.
Okay, a very serious set of measures needed to combat a very serious situation indeed. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for joining us here for this discussion. Hussein, Nyout, Mawan, Muortat and George Fominyen. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime just by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on Twitter. There our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here, bye for now.